us online in South Africa and I believe from outside of the country as well. My name is Mzilikazi Themba Khumalo. I am the Chief Marketing Officer of South African Tourism substantively, and I am also the Acting Chief Executive of South African Tourism. Just by way of context, my entire career I have been in the marketing space. I've worked for Unilever, I've worked for the Coca-Cola company, I've worked for 3 telcos, from MTN as GM Marketing, as the founding Chief Commercial Officer of Cell C. I've also worked as a managing executive for Telkom in its recovery. And historically, I've also been the Chief Marketing Officer for South African Tourism in its foundational years from 2002 to 2006. So I'm very familiar with the marketing environment within tourism. I'm very familiar with what it takes to win in the world. And in terms of us being able to generate the economic impact that our country so dearly requires in order for us to be able to restore the dignity of a better life for all South Africans. So it is in that context that I stand in front of you to address the issue that has become very topical over the last 24 to 36 hours in terms of one of the envisaged marketing initiatives that we had contemplated as an entity, both at board level and also at executive level. I want to preface the detail of everything that we are going to be discussing with really first starting and looking at what the marketing mandate of South African tourism is. According to the Tourism Act, number 3 of 2014, the mandate of South African tourism is to market South Africa as a tourist destination, both domestically and internationally. From a domestic standpoint, it is about getting South Africans to, tour within the country so that, we can both support tourism product within the country and also keep the money rotating within our economy. The second part of our mandate is to get people outside of our economy, because the way in which to bring foreign investment into your economy is only through 3 ways. One is you develop great projects on the ground that international investors will send money into, so foreign direct investment into projects. The second one is you make great products, you export them, and you get the forex in. And the third one is to get people to physically travel into the economy and spend forex within the economy, and that is our mandate. We have 24 markets around the world that we focus on. In the Americas, we focus, in North America, the USA, Canada, and Brazil. Across Europe, we focus on the UK, Germany, France, the Netherlands, and also the Scandinavian countries. And across Asia, we also focus on India, China, Japan, Australia, in terms of getting arrivals. In order to do that, the money that is invested in marketing happens in those markets. This has been happening for the last 20 years. You've got to market in the US to persuade Americans to travel here. You've got to market in the UK in order to get UK citizens to travel here. So the issue of where the spend has been happening, for the last 20 years, money has been spent on foreign soil to persuade foreign nationals to travel into South Africa. It is not a new thing. So whether, and I'm going to come back to the specific envisaged project, whether the money is spent on a single initiative, as was being envisaged now, or whether the money is spent on small campaigns, with different travel agents and different pockets of audiences. That money does get invested on foreign soil every single year for the past 20 years. So that is not a new thing, and I just thought that I should set the record straight in that respect. Now, I want to give you where we find ourselves from a tourism destination in terms of the econometrics of tourism, where we find ourselves right now. Pre-COVID, we were contributing 6.4% to the GDP of the country. And I'm going to invite shortly, my colleague, Robert Manson, the acting chief strategy officer, to share a little bit more detail on this. But we were contributing 6.4% to GDP. Through COVID, through the riots, and through the floods, that contribution has dropped to 3.2%. We have got to return to pre-COVID to 2019 levels in order for us to get back to 6.4 and beyond. I believe that tourism can contribute double-digit contribution into the economy. From a job standpoint, the global average is that every 1 in 10 jobs is contributed by tourism. In South Africa, it's 1 to 13. So clearly, we are lagging behind the global average in terms of the ratio of job contribution by tourism. If you look at the 2019 levels in terms of our recovery of tourism arrivals, can I have some silence, please? At the back of the room, please. Thank you. If you look at the 2019 levels of tourism arrivals, in terms of our recovery trajectory, we are sitting at 60% against the 2019 levels before we went into COVID. The global average recovery is sitting at 73%. So we are in fact 13 percentage points lower than the global average from a recovery standpoint. The President of the Republic of South Africa put down a target, which still remains because it has not been revoked, put down a target of 21 million arrivals by 2030. That is the policy target of the country. If you look at where we're sitting right now at 5.6 million arrivals, to hit the target of 21 million arrivals by 2030, we have to grow at a CAGR, an average compounded average growth of 18% year on year, cumulatively, for 8 years in order for us to hit that target. I'm saying this to paint the context that if we continue doing marketing and business the way that we've done it historically, small little initiatives all over the place, there is no chance for us to hit that particular target. We have got to get an inflection point in our growth trajectory to make sure that we're able to achieve the economic impact that we know tourism can bring to the country. Now, let me go into the media investment over the last couple of years. The media investment between 2015 and 2017, 3-year rolling average, we spent over that period 950 million in terms of media investment in international marketing. If you take 2016 to 2018, we spent 1,081,000, okay, in terms of foreign media investment. If you take 2017 to 2019, those 3 years, we spent just under 1.2 billion in terms of media investment on foreign soil. So that money has been spent in international marketing in any event. And I can assure you, this year, whether it is through this initiative that we're debating today or through any other initiative, we are still going to spend in that region of investment on foreign soil to get international travelers to travel into the destination. So it's going to happen in any event. So this envisaged deal is not asking the fiscus to introduce new money into our marketing budget. That's not the case. What we are doing is aggregating all the small little, projects that you've never heard of, they were happening anyway. You didn't know about them. We are asking for all of that money to be aggregated into a high impact initiative in order for us to be able to get the yield that we know and the inflection point in terms of our growth trajectory that we know that this country deserves. Now, if you take the UK alone, the UK and the US, so our biggest international market by arrivals is the United Kingdom. It contributes just over 500,000 visitors, about 530 visitors to the country. So that's our biggest international market into the country. Then you take the USA, which is our fastest growing international market. If you take just those two markets and you look at the contribution over a 3-year trajectory, those markets, and my colleague Robert will give you the detail that lies underneath this number. We are going to get an international spend from just those two markets into our economy of 88 billion, with the big billion, rands into our economy. Now, if we're going to be investing in the region of the numbers that I've just shown you from a media exposure standpoint, 950, 1 billion, 1.2 billion, if we're going to invest, in that region, around 1 billion to get 88 billion, that's the P&L that we're looking at. That's the profit and loss that you're looking at. It is a solid business case that has got a direct impact in terms of foreign investment that comes into the country, that is able to then create jobs, sustain SMMEs, and be able to return, the dignity of a better life to our people around South Africa. So, let me look straight into camera and say this to all South Africans. The money that's invested in tourism is not the same money that's required for energy. It's not the same amount of money that is required for potholes. There are other departments that are dedicated and are given that mandate by legislation. Our legislated mandate is not about that. Our legislated mandate is about persuading international people to travel into the country and spend money in our economy. And that is what we will stick to. Whether it is through this initiative or any other initiative, but that is what we are mandated to do, that is what we're paid to do, and that is what we will continue to do until we're told otherwise. So I just wanted to place that particular context for what we're going to discuss, which is the topical issue on the table. Now, how do you find these people around the world? What you certainly don't do is you don't do random. You don't just, place an ad on TV and hope somebody's going to see it and that they'll be persuaded to come to the country. That's not what we do. There are aggregators of databases around the world. So you've got to find platforms that aggregate convertible databases in order for you to market directly, so that you know that the people that you're targeting, one, are aware of your destination, two, have got the money to travel long haul, and three, have got the willingness to do a long haul trip. So you've got to be able to access those databases. Now, who are the aggregators of those databases? One, global media, whether CNN, BBC, etc., all of the big global media houses are able to aggregate audiences, just like here in South Africa, whether it is Newsroom Africa, ETV, SABC, you are aggregators of audiences, and the people that place adverts on your channels are not doing it for your entity. They're trying to get to your audience. And that is precisely what we're doing. We looked at who are the big aggregators of audiences in the world. So, media houses are the first big aggregators of audiences. The second big aggregators of audiences is sport and entertainment. They aggregate audiences. People in this room on a weekend are glued to their TV watching, the British Premiership. You are part of those audiences. And people will pay money to access you, to persuade you to buy their product, their services, or to travel to their countries. So, the envisaged deal that we're looking at has got absolutely nothing to do with football. Let me look straight in the camera. It's got nothing to do with football. It's got to do with accessing the aggregated audiences that football brings. That's who we're after. We're after the viewers of football, the followers of football that have got the spend and the willingness to travel long haul into our destination. So, the whole narrative, and we'll come to why we're in this narrative, somebody maliciously leaked confidential documentation into the press prematurely while the discussion was still being had. We're going to zero in on that on another day. But this is not about football. So the whole conversation about we are supporting Team A and not Team B is a misguided conversation. We are accessing the audience in the British Premier League. We are accessing it so that we can persuade them to travel to South Africa, spend pounds, euros, dollars, yen in our destination and bring dignity back to our people. That is what we're doing. It's about the aggregated audiences. So sports and entertainment is the second biggest aggregator of audiences. The third one is actually the search engines. So the big buying engines, whether it's, and I apologize for using brand names. So whether it is TravelStart, whether it is Expedia, those are big aggregators of travel audiences that you're able to access. So this deal that we were envisaging is not in isolation of all the others. It is in conjunction with. So we're doing this sports and entertainment audience, but we're also looking at deals with the big sales engines, whether it is Expedia, TravelStart. We've got those proposals on the table. We're looking at that. We're also looking at aggregators of content. So a few years ago, there was a partnership that we had with Netflix. Why? Because there's an aggregation of audiences on those platforms. We have MOUs with some of the people that I'm speaking to on here. Broadcasters here in the country where we do content deals. We just done one now, last week, with a broadcaster here on domestic travel. It's not about football, it's about audiences. And this is what we will continue to do, is to access those audiences, persuade them to come to the country and to spend the foreign hard currencies inside our destination. I will ask my colleague in a moment to come in, but let me also just go through the timeline of how we got to this press conference here today. We started our planning cycle in August last year. We met in Kempton Park, and we had all of our stakeholders, all of the Banji, we had all the provinces, we had all of our private sector partners, TVCSA, all of the other partners in the room. And we agreed, and I'm looking straight in camera because I know you're watching me. We agreed that one of the 7 buckets of work that we're going to do is that we are going to look at mega events inside of South Africa and mega events that are happening internationally where we can go and market. So when we do this, how is that different from what we agreed? We agreed it as a sector. That's what we're going to do. So we went and we looked for these platforms where you've got big aggregation of audiences, where you've got mega events happening around the world. Now here's the criteria that we use for international platforms. And it will be in your press packs. Firstly, the platform has got to give us global reach. It has to have global reach. It has to be able to mirror all of the 24 markets in which we do international marketing. So that's the first thing. The second thing is it has to be sustained across the year, all 12 months of the year. Now here's where the challenge is. If you're going to place an advert on CNN consistently throughout the year, Well, we don't have that kind of money. So you've got to now choose other platforms where the cost per reach and the cost per point and the opportunities to see where the OTT on the platform gives you the kind of yield that you require. So that is what we looked at in terms of accessing this particular platform. Global reach, sustained throughout the year. 3, it must have an audience that we can convert into travel, because it's not just about creating awareness. Okay, people are aware how they're going to travel to the country. You've got to make sure that the audiences that you reach can be converted. You can sell a sales package directly to them. And that is what we did. These audiences, we are going to be able to market directly into the databases so that we're able to actually calculate the ROI in terms of we marketed into this base, we spent X, how many people did we actually convert? When you place it generically on a TV spot without the conversion mechanism, you're unable to calculate the direct impact between awareness and actual sales. So that is why we went for platforms where we're able to calculate that particular conversion ratio. So that is the next thing that we did. We also looked at the impact that this will have on our brand strength index versus our competitive set. Now, if you look at our brand strength index, and the team will make sure that the brand strength index is made available to you. We've got 3 drivers on our brand strength index. One is the brand stature, the stature of our destination in comparison to other long-haul destinations. And it is all around the performance against price, against product, etc. The second driver is around the personality of our destination. And there, on personality, we are lagging slightly low. The third one is on overall unaided awareness. And in there, we're also lagging pretty low. Now, if you're going to fix an awareness issue, either you're going to throw a lot of media money at it, or you have to have the kind of personality that commands attention. You're going to have to do something that is noteworthy. So, when you do a deal on this scale, it catches the attention of the world, it catches the attention of everybody. Look at us here in this room. 2 days ago, no attention on tourism. Today, we're all in this room. We have your attention and we deeply appreciate it. So here's the thing. Now that we have your attention, we can now actually have this conversation. And that is precisely what this deal does internationally. When you make an announcement on this scale, it commands the attention of the world and gives you the opportunity for you to articulate your story. And that is why we approach this transaction in this particular way. So, August, we had our planning session and all stakeholders were in the room. We then went through the board process. We presented our exceptionalism strategy to the board in November. In January, in our board cycle now, we presented to the board this particular opportunity that we're going to talk about in detail in a moment. And the board made the decision to go and actually verify whether what we were saying was true, among other things. And also to be able to engage with other stakeholders in the UK in terms of our global advocacy programs and other programs that we're doing across the UK and across Europe. So there was a question that was floated around. Did the board go to the UK? Yes, the board did go to the UK. Was I part of the trip? Yes, I was. We went. You have to do due diligence on any single thing that you do. Certain board members went. We had a look. We were persuaded that this was a good opportunity. We came back. It went through the board process rigor to the marketing committee of the board. It then went to the board on the 27th, January 27th. Additional time was needed to conclude the conversation. That meeting was had at back in the marketing committee at 12:30 on the 31st, which was Tuesday. It was also had, the full board then met at 8 p.m. on Tuesday. This story was already out before the board even met to have the conversation. I'm saying this to say to you that the version of the story that you've been told is not true. It was leaked out of context. And this whole thing could have been avoided if we just had a conversation about why we're doing this. Therefore, the intent of the leak was not to aid economic recovery of the country. It was something else that has got nothing to do with the mandate that is in the Tourism Act. And I think that whoever is responsible for that leak needs to be isolated. It is un-South African to behave in that manner. The board then met at 8 p.m. We went through the conversation, and here is what the board decided. Obviously, it's an internal document. I cannot make it available to you, but this is what I can say to you. The board made a conditional approval. Conditional. And the condition was, we believe that commercially this makes sense, but can you go and align with all stakeholders, including the minister, including the DG, including Treasury, including provinces. Just go and make sure that all stakeholders are aligned. But before we could do that, this issue was already in the public domain. So all stakeholders that say that they were not consulted, it's the truth. We were still on our way before this thing was leaked. And we could not have engaged without at least an approval in principle from our board. So that was a sequence of events. The leak superseded the engagement, and therefore we are still going through that engagement because we believe in the commercial value of what we are doing. There was a question that was floated around, is there a signed contract with the entity? No. All right, let me repeat that. There is no signed contract. Let's make that absolutely clear. There was a conversation around the boardroom table, conditional approval, that it was conditional, so we can't go and sign until you've fulfilled the conditions precedent on the approval. And the conditions precedent was to go and do the stakeholder alignment. So while we're still doing that, the story broke. So no, there's no signed contract. So this whole thing that we have now signed off, billion rands, to some team, get your facts straight. There is no signed contract. And let that be clear. Is there an intention to? Absolutely. Otherwise we wouldn't be here. So we still have to go through the due diligence. We've got to go through all of our treasury regulations. We've got to make sure that this, meets all of, the compliance requirements of the government of South Africa. We are a public entity. We would not rush and go and do things that are not in line with the governance of the country. So let me say it on record, no signed contract, going through governance process. Once we've done that, we will let you know. But that is where this issue stands right now. The timeline, because now there's a question of, did the minister know, did the minister not know? Did this, let me state on record. The minister could not be briefed until such time that the board had made a decision to support or not to support. So that meeting was on Tuesday evening. So there is no way that the minister could have known about the detail of this deal, anywhere before the board had made a decision. So timeline is very important, and I want to place that on record as well. There's also a question that has been floating around in terms of there are third parties involved in this deal. Please, 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 please. There are no third parties involved in this deal. Deal is between South African Tourism and the envisaged entity. Where agencies are concerned is in terms of creating the content. So if you're going to be on an LED screen, you need somebody to create the actual messaging content that's going to fly on the screens. So in their capacity as creators of messaging, of content, of augmenting, the platform, absolutely you need your agency partners to be able to do, the work to leverage the platform. But were our agencies involved in the commercial arrangement? No, there are no agencies involved in the commercial arrangement. This thing came up in the board and I clarified it, and I'm clarifying it now to the country. There are no third parties involved. And if anybody believes that there are, I put you to the strict proof thereof. And that is where this issue lies, ladies and gentlemen. We have a job to do. There are young children out there who, if economic relief does not reach them through tourism, they are not going to be able to go to school. We should not be fixated on the fact that they are not able to go to school. We should be fixated on bringing the economic relief to them. That is where our focus must be. Our focus must be in terms of how we recover this economy. That is where the focus must be. Our focus must be, how do we change our growth trajectory from a 13% CAGR to an 18% CAGR? That's where our focus must be. Our focus must be in terms of the SMMEs that are supported by this sector. When we went through COVID, we had people that thought that they were in the retail business until there was no one traveling. And they suddenly realized that they were actually in the tourism management. We've got to stay focused on the mandate that is in the Tourism Act, number 3 of 2014. We've got to focus on economic recovery. We've got to increase the geographic spread of the impact of tourism into villages, towns, and small dorpies. We have got to recover tourism in terms of bringing in young people, content creators that are able to share content onto this platform that we're envisaging. We've got to be able to bring in young women. We've got to bring in people with disabilities. That's where the focus must be. It is not football, it's aggregated audiences. And if you get past the emotion around a football team and you start looking at it in terms of what is behind, which is the audiences, then we'll begin to have the right conversation. So, again, saying that we should take this money and invest it in local football is to suggest that tourism must reach across into the domain of the Sports, Arts and Culture Department. And we're not going to do that. We are in the tourism business. This is a platform that gives us an aggregated audience. It is not the only platform. There's also sales aggregators. There's also media aggregators. There's also event organizers that we're going to go into. There's TV shows around the world. There's a whole lot of platforms where we've got aggregated audiences, and that is what we're going to do. And I just thought that we should set the record straight. I'm open for questions. I'm also open for one-on-ones. I'm here the whole day. All right? If you want to meet even after hours, I'm here. One-on-one. I'm being serious. I take this issue very seriously. So if anyone wants to meet one-on-one because you want your own story angle, let's meet. There's rooms here. We'll sit down. We'll go through the conversations. If you want to meet, if you want me to come to your studio, the team is here. They'll book my time. I'll come to your studio. We'll have the discussion. Clear this whole week. We're going to deal with this issue. We're going to bring it back onto the conversation about economic recovery, because that's the conversation. And we're going to continue to build a great nation. We believe that tourism is one of the biggest economic drivers and will continue to increase its influence and its impact on the economy. Tourism will create more jobs. Tourism will bring more young people into the fold. Tourism will bring more women into the fold. Tourism will bring people with disabilities into the fold. Tourism will bring people in villages, towns, and small dorpies into the fold. Tourism will continue to be a powerhouse of driving economic recovery. Let's get past this and let's get back to business. With that said, please allow me to invite my colleague, Robert Manson, the Acting Chief Strategy Officer, just to go through a little bit more detail on the numbers, and then I'll come back, we'll wrap up, and then we'll do a Q&A, and we'll then do one-on-ones. Thank you very much. Robert, you ready?
My role is to dissect the numbers from a tourism industry point of view. As the acting CEO said, I'm the acting chief strategy officer at SA Tourism. Really, I want to take you through where the industry is coming from an economic impact point of view. In 2019, that's before COVID, South Africa got 6.4% of the share of the GDP. So the tourism industry contributed $405 billion to the GDP in this country. And with that said, 1.5 million jobs were actually in the sector at that particular time. And we all know what happened in 2020. That contribution dropped from 6.4 to 3.1%. And we lost almost 500,000 jobs from 2019 to 2020. We had about 1 million jobs in 2020 from a tourism point of view. And we all know the impact of that. And then in 2022, we started seeing a little bit of recovery. The contribution went up to 3.2%, and the number of jobs slightly dropped as well. They increased slightly as well to just over 1 million jobs within the sector. What is very interesting is we've seen that over the last year or so, the tourism sector is recovering. South Africa is really slipping behind from a global point of view. If you look at the average growth in terms of the recovery, the global context, countries are recovering at about 73%, 74% around there. But from a South African point of view, we're still sitting at 60% compared to the 2019 numbers. Really, this actually goes to show what the acting CEO was saying. If we want to recover as quickly as possible, and more importantly, pivot to higher levels, we can't continue doing things the same way. What is very interesting is we just received our 2022 numbers for the full year. We have actually received 5.7 million tourists in South Africa between January and December 2022. That makes it 152% increase from 2021. And really, when you start looking at these numbers and you start looking at what is the tourist spend when they come into the country, really that starts making things very interesting so that people can understand that even though the company is wanting to invest a certain amount of money to certain initiatives, the return on investment from a tourist spend point of view, the numbers are quite staggering, and I'll share that with you as well just in a moment. We did some numbers last year together with the industry. We said from 2022 to 2030, if we want to get 21 million arrivals, as the President had said a couple of years ago in one of his State of the Nation address, we have to make sure that we grow at a CAGR of 18%. If we grow at a CAGR of 13%, we will be getting at 15.3 million. So we really need to start doing things completely different for us to be able to stimulate the economy and make an impact on the tourism point of view. The numbers that have actually arrived from a tourist arrivals point of view, we have got different regions. I'm sure you all know. We've got the Africa region, we've got the Europe region, we've got Americas, we've got Asia, and we also have got the Middle East as well. All in all, in 2022, the tourist spend in South Africa has been 59 billion in 2022, January 2022 to December 2022. And this is an increase of 186% compared to the previous year. In 2021, we had 20 billion in tourist spend in the country. And in December 2022, we received 59.6 billion in terms of tourist spend. And really, this goes to show that the recovery is really coming at a very fast pace rate, and we also need to make sure that as a country, we don't actually get left behind, but we accelerate that. And the number that I also want to share here with you is the two of our key markets. We all know that from a Europe point of view, UK is one of our key markets, US is also one of our key markets. From the 5.7 million tourist arrivals that we received in 2022, 283,000 of those came from the UK. 262,000 of those came from the US. How much did the UK tourists spend in South Africa in 2022? 6.6 billion is what the UK arrivals spent in South Africa. From the US point of view, they spent 8.3 billion. we are making projections. If we grow at 13%, we are going to receive 319,000 UK arrivals next year. And we are going to receive 296,000 arrivals from the United States of America. And the spend in 2023 from a UK point of view, we are projecting that to be 7.5 billion. And if you move over to 2024, we are projecting 361,000 arrivals from the UK. And the spend associated with that is 8.5 billion. And if we look at a 3-year horizon from 2023 to 2025, UK alone will actually contribute to about 30 billion in terms of the spend in South Africa. This is from the UK market alone. And if you look at it from a US point of view, we are looking at about 40 billion in terms of the Americans spending money in South Africa as tourists. So really, when we start looking at these numbers, it really goes to paint a completely different context that when you invest a certain amount of money, and what is your return on investment. So these are some of the stats that I wanted to share with you so that I can give more context in how the tourism sector is recovering, where we are projecting to be vis-a-vis the foreign tourist direct spend that we spend in the coming to the country. So really, I will stop there from a numbers point of view, and we'll have some questions later. I'll invite you to see what on stage.
Thank you very much, Robert, for those numbers. I've received, some messaging that say, TK, can you just tone down a little bit? There's too much intensity in the room. To the extent that my intensity might have caused you a little discomfort, please forgive me. I believe in the work that we do. I tend to go into overdrive in that respect. So to the extent that I might have come across a little bit too robust, please forgive me for that. The content of what I've said still stands. Yeah. I'd like to just conclude by saying, I really appreciate we have our chairperson of the board here, Dr. Mhlomo, who is here to my right. We're joined online by the rest of the board. They are listening in. We do have all of our executive present here today, who might want you might need to ask them some specific questions that might not have been covered in this discussion. So we are all here available to to answer your questions. And let me also say thank you to the media for this moment, for us being able to have this discussion, for showing an interest in the tourism sector and for showing up in such great numbers, both directly here and online. Thank you very much for that. At least we're having a conversation about the sector. We might differ in terms of the tactics. We might differ in terms of certain strategic focus areas, but I believe that we all want the same thing. And for you holding us honest as well, that if indeed, things were being done that were harmful, to South Africans and to the economy, we should be held accountable for that. So to the extent that you've been able to engage with us on this, I deeply appreciate it, and thank you, for really showing up and for engaging in this regard. I'll now turn over to my colleague, Itandiwe Matibela. Q&A?
Yes.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Toggle between questions that we've got online as well as questions from this room. We'll begin with a set of 3 questions from this room. We'll take one or the other, and then we'll allow the CEO as well as Mr. Manson to respond. We will then go to the online questions. So to everyone that is joining us online, please note that we will definitely address your questions that we've got. We do have people that are monitoring that. So let us begin with the first 3 questions here in the room, and we will try as much as possible to take as many questions as possible. So 3 questions, we do have roving mics.
Thank you very much. I'm going to be cheeky and ask 3 questions, if I can. One is...
You identify yourself first.
Oh yes, I can. I'm Adele Mackenzie from Tourism Update. I'm the editor of Tourism Update. It's a publication aimed at international travel trade and local travel trade. So the three questions are, do you have an expectation of the, you were speaking about the ROI and the global reach, mentioning that this particular contract, if I understood correctly, this particular contract proposal could reach 24 markets, and what is the global reach there? The other question is really from representing the tourism industry, the supply chain, the product supply side. We know that they're also facing a lot of, absolutely applaud the need to bring in other players, youth, women. I mean, as a woman, I completely agree. But there are existing suppliers that have really struggled. They're struggling with electricity.
Okay, thank you very much for the questions. They're quite challenging, and I appreciate them. So I'm going to start with the questions from Tourism Update. The reach of this particular deal should, it proceed. It will reach 661 million people, all right? And those are people that watch the game live. Now, I was on a flight, and I actually wasn't looking at this particular dynamic until this person said this to me. This person was flying, in business class, and they said to me they can't afford to watch every single Premiership game live because it is so expensive. And that then gave me the idea that it means that the people that watch the game live are of a certain LSM, they're of a certain income bracket. So we actually went and we dug into the numbers, and we found that the audience that actually follows the Premiership globally is affluent, can afford to travel, and there's a high propensity to travel within that base. So if you've got 616 million as a base, and you converted 10%, that is 61.6 million. If you only converted 1%, that is still 6 million arrivals. So just 1% conversion of the entire base would give you an additional 6 million arrivals, which are not currently in our consideration set. So that's how we get that inflection point in terms of the growth. So there's the number. 1% gives you an additional 6 million travel. And that is why we know that this deal, and then if you take that 6 million times the average spend that Robert was talking about, that gives you billions in terms of return into the economy. So that is, on the ROI. In terms of value chain, one of the things that we looked at in terms of the different composition of the teams is, and I don't want to go into the detail, by the way, because we're under confidentiality, but let me just give you this particular dimension. They're over 35 members of the House of Lords, House of Commons, inside of that base. Now, if you remember when we had the whole Omicron virus lockdown at the end of last year, and we couldn't get people out of Europe and out of the biggest transit point, which is the United Emirates. Being able to access decision makers in those markets for advocacy reasons is absolutely critical. So part of what this partnership does is it gives us access to policymakers in a way that we would not normally be able to access that base. Also, there are CEOs of London-listed companies as part of their base. So in terms of MICE travel, meetings, incentives, conventions, and exhibitions, we are able to then go and pitch to those big UK corporates in order to drive business travel into the country. So when you start unpacking the deal, you'll start seeing that there's a lot of other underlying benefits in terms of how we'll be able to actually drive the return on investment for this deal, and how we drive advocacy back channeling in order for us to get this done. And that's why I say part of the trip that we made was to engage with our own High Commissioner in the UK in terms of, should this deal go ahead, how would our High Commissioner be able to leverage some of the access that this deal would make from an advocacy standpoint. So all of that, we have considered. We've also looked at the issue around direct airlift. So in order for you to recover from any destination around the world, you need direct airlift. And one of the things that has happened is we've lost a lot of direct airlift, from our key source markets. Some, source markets, we haven't lost the direct airlift, but we've lost the frequencies. And inside the frequencies, we've lost the size of aircraft. So they're flying smaller aircraft less frequently. So part of driving that demand is so that we actually get more frequencies and we get bigger metal on each of those frequencies so that we're able to drive our tourism recovery. So that's on the value chain issue. And then in terms of assisting the product owners on the supply side, that supply side mandate does not sit with South African tourism. It actually sits with our department. All right, so that question should be directed to the Director General, the highly competent DDGs that are dedicated and run programs in this respect, and I'm sure they'll be able to to provide you with a response in terms of the supply side. Let me come to the questions from Bloomberg. As I said, we are under confidentiality, so I can't go too deep into some of the detail there. I can neither confirm nor deny that the numbers that are in the public domain are true. I can neither confirm nor deny. There are documents that are flying around. This is the age of social media. People can edit PDFs and can do all kinds of things. So I don't know what version of the document is out there. And I will confine myself to documents that are released procedurally and to information that is properly vetted and released through the normal channels. What I can say in terms of the deal, because that was a follow-up question, where are we sitting with the deal? Before we were rudely interrupted, we were in conversation. We have had to halt that conversation so that we can have this conversation and get all of our stakeholders back on side. And should we succeed in that respect, then the conversation will then proceed. One of the things that we do not do, and let me say this clearly, we are part of a broader tourism family, and we cannot simply proceed regardless of what our stakeholders are saying. We've got to be sensitive to what our partners are saying, and we've got to slow down. We've got to engage and make sure that everybody's on board, and then we can move together holistically. So that is kind of where the deal is right now. And should we make progress in this respect, we, through our global GM of PR comms, the highly competent Tandiwe Matibela, we will communicate with you, and we will set up another forum to update you. Questions on Newsroom Africa, they also link into the Times Live question around Rwanda. We've looked at that case study. We've looked at others. We've looked at Malaysia. We've looked at all of those different case studies. And let me first answer why this particular team. So if you look at all of the top performing teams in the British Premier League, all of the ones before Tottenham already have tourism partners. They already have tourism partners. So even if we wanted to, we could not engage them because they already have partners. So this was the only team in the top performing tier that did not have a destination partner. So we went through the whole list, and that's how we ended up here. The Rwanda case study, and we will make that available to you. By the way, we've analyzed it, and we will make it available to you. team, please, every promise that I make, please, don't make me a liar. All right, so we've analyzed that. That deal was a straight media buy. It was buying access to the audience and nothing else. When you look at our deal, it has got a whole lot of other benefits, like I've just alluded, to the fact that we are able to do advocacy, through this deal. We're able to do other, more creative things. So it's not just a straight media buy. And that is why they paid that amount of money, and we're paying slightly more because we have to access, other, an extra bouquet of benefits which is not inside the Rwanda deal. There was also inside the Rwanda deal, there was a lot of, I'm now talking about the trickle-down question. Inside the Rwanda transaction, as I said, because it was a direct media transaction, it didn't have the on-the-ground impact components. And we have been very, very insistent that in our deal, there will be activity on the ground inside South Africa. That's as far as I can go. So once the deal is concluded, we'll unpack it, there will be activity on the ground. It will impact directly inside our economy. So that is some of the differences between our deal and the Rwanda deal. So it will impact businesses here directly. And that is as far as I can go. In terms of the question around the
malicious leak.
Yeah, okay, I'll get to the malicious leak. In terms, yes, I did receive a phone call last night concerning a Chelsea deal. I raised both my hands. I've never seen the document. I've never seen it. I asked my colleagues. All right. I've seen a completely different team, but not the one that is being referred to. So have we received another team? Yeah, we did. But the one that's being referred to, nah, not seen it. Maybe it was seen by a colleague of mine, I don't know. But, formally being presented to us as an option, no, that we've not seen.
So the question was, in terms of the stakeholders, since we are still consulting, because
Yes.
the department has seen it, the department which you fall under.
Oh, the department has seen the document. Oh, okay. You see, so we wouldn't be able to speak on behalf of the department. I think that question should be directed to the DG. I think the department would be able to respond to that one. It was not, communicated, to me. I've never seen that proposal. But I do confirm to you that I have seen another proposal, just not this particular one. But I have seen another proposal. And that one we saw in the middle of COVID, and the board took a position then, not on the principle of whether we should access the audiences or not. It was an issue of timing, that because we were in the middle of COVID, that was probably not the right timing to look at this audience aggregator. So the conditions have changed now, and that's why we're looking at the Premiership as an aggregator of audiences. But I'm happy to sit with you and discuss the issue further. Thank you, sir. In terms of the ramifications, we have got internal processes that we will follow in terms of identifying how the leak occurred. Documents that are discussed inside of a board environment are confidential documents. And it is a breach of the board charter. It is a breach of conditions of employment to leak documents outside of due process. So the applicable, processes will be followed, and should the actor of the leak, be identified, the relevant, remedies will be made available to the board to address it, and that is as far as I can go in that regard. So that is the questions so far. I don't know if there are any further questions. Did I answer your question satisfactorily? Thank you, sir.
We need online questions.
There's still questions in the room.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So everyone, my name is Sebo from the staff. I just want to find out in terms of way forward, because people are calling for the deed to be scrapped already, because that's who DA and everyone else. They're saying this is a vanity project that shouldn't be undertaken. What is the message currently?
I think if the transaction is looked at from the lens of football, if it's looked at, from that lens, I can understand how we can arrive at that conclusion. But if we are looking at aggregated audiences, we're looking at return on investment in terms of accessing those audiences. We're looking at, inflection point in terms of our growth trajectory to achieve an 18% CAGR, and that inflection point times, the average spend per visitor, and how that is going to impact jobs, etc., etc. I don't think we'll arrive at the same conclusion. So, as I said, we had a mandate to say, okay, now that the deal is provisionally approved, go and engage those stakeholders. So we will be on a roadshow to engage all stakeholders, and should they be persuaded otherwise, would then proceed with the transaction. I think it's simply a misunderstanding that needs to be cleared up through dialogue. And South Africa is a country built on dialogue. It's a country built on sufficient consensus around issues, and we will proceed along those lines of our democratic South Africa.
Thanks. Just another one from me. You spoke about how you have decided to aggregate or put together smaller projects, or the money that would have gone to smaller projects in order to fund this. Can you talk us through what went into the decision making of which projects specifically you thought were worth doing away with in order to fund this? And then we've been hearing numbers, 36% of your total spend being channeled into this. Is that the correct number? Can you just verify that? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll start with the last question. And I think, when Robert was presenting the numbers and earlier on, I did allude to the fact that, we are going to consolidate these smaller projects. The average commitment from a media standpoint, as a percentage of our total budget, is in the region of 35 to 40% of our total spend. Others is used in other kinds of initiatives. So all that we were doing here is to say what we would have invested in small, disparate, low impact projects, we will aggregate into accessing where we can actually clearly measure the return on investment, and we're accessing a bigger audience. And as I said, at 1%, you already have, a growth of 6 million additional channels. So those numbers, yes, are by and large a correct reflection of the state of investment. Okay.
We go online.
Okay.
I think there's one more question here, and then we can go on.
Thanks, Sebo from BNC. Question CEO, okay, you've explained actually on why the Tottenham Hotspur instead of other teams, but I'm just thinking also, did you consider maybe talking to the Springboks, looking at their global engaged audiences, and looking at the fact that it's also a rugby World Cup year? Was that part of your scope, large scope? Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. As I said, our strategy is around everything that we are exceptional about as a destination. We've got exceptional people, we've got exceptional places, we've got exceptional cultural ways that we'd like to export to the rest of the world. We also look at exceptional platforms around the world into which we can go and do exceptional things. When I went through the criteria of how we decide on a platform, we said that it should have international reach and it should be sustainable across the year. The challenge with World Cups is they happen for a finite period of time. And then after that, you don't have the annual impact. So yes, we will engage around the World Cup, but it is around advocacy and using soft power. Look, we're 3 times world champions. We're going in there to defend. We are at the highest point in terms of our performance and exceptionalism as a country. So absolutely, we are going to engage in that platform, but not in the same kind of way. It will have a different kind of spin. We also have a Netball World Cup that's happening here in the country. So we're also looking at that. We've got mega events that are happening. In fact, where's Zinke? Our acting chief convention bureau officer informed me this morning, and you're welcome. I just need to get a hold of her so she can give you the details. We have put out a call yesterday, nationally, for people to submit proposals for events and platforms for us to support. So absolutely, we've got to build platforms here that people are going to come into the country in order to come and enjoy. So this is not an isolation of all of those. We're also, the call went out
yesterday.
So the call, please come up, put your hands together for Zinke. This is our acting chief convention bureau officer. All right, so can you just talk about the call that we put out?
Certainly. Good day, everyone. So we have what you call a bid support program. The program was put together to assist events organizers who wish to host meetings in South Africa. So what we have done and what we have reviewed over the years is that it has always been streamlined. So for the first time yesterday, we published a call out to every South African, to every events organizer who wishes to host their event in South Africa. So basically, it becomes a support program that will assist you through formulation of strategy, but also elevate some of costs which are related to building or to hosting your event in South Africa. So that's the whole point of us having this call out, but on a widespread, so that it reaches everyone who wants to host an event in South Africa. Thank you.
So, as I said, we've got a mandate to convince foreign nationals to travel to the country. We do so by going onto their platforms, but we also need on the supply side to have events that are worthy of people being able to travel to South Africa for. And we have to support the event platform in order for us to be able to attract people into the country. So that we're also doing, and that is what Zinke was referring to. So absolutely we will do that. Okay, so can we go online? Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, CEO. Questions from Rebecca Davis. The first question is, Minister Sisulu's spokesperson has confirmed that the minister signed off on the delegation to travel to the UK to do due diligence. Can Mr. Kumalo please confirm when the minister was briefed on the proposal? Mr. Kumalo has just said that there are no agencies involved in the proposal. She makes reference to a PowerPoint presentation that states that WWP agency will be used. Please clarify. Is a delegation still traveling to London this week to take the deal forward? What is Mr. Kumalo's response to the opinions expressed by multiple tourism and marketing experts that this is not a good use of tourism market budget? And if CEO can also please clarify how the deal was actually evaluated and what the ROI thereof would be.
Okay, thank you very much. I will start with the last part of the question, which is, the ROI. I think we've spent this whole morning, having that conversation, so I take that question as answered. The second thing about a document that, is being referred to, I don't know how that document got into anybody's hands. I cannot speak to the authenticity of the document. I cannot speak to the content of a document that was obtained in that manner. All that I can refer to is documents that we release officially, where we can verify, the efficacy of the contents. So in terms of being able to refer to a document that I have not seen, I'm not going to do that. I don't think that it is appropriate to do so. What I believe is appropriate is if we need to have a conversation with that particular journalist, we can sit down and we can go through it and we can provide authentic documents and have a conversation. I'm here all day. I'm not avoiding the question. I'm saying to sit down, put a document that we can verify, and have a conversation over that document. And then, we can then come to an understanding. So that is where I'm going to leave that one. Otherwise, we'll be answering to all kinds of versions of documents that are out there, and I don't think that that is fair. So the invitation is being issued to that particular journalist to come sit down, and we'll have a conversation around it. I'm open and available to do so. Thank you.